Anybody that's listening to this, spoiler alert. Sorry, I thought that was important to do a little spoiler alert.
Welcome back to In Residence. I'm Keith.
And I'm Laura.
Hey, Laura.
Hi, Keith.
Let's talk a little bit about what we've been doing over the last week. In particular, our night out.
Ooh, parents' night out.
Yeah. We finally intentionally went to a live concert.
And we haven't done that since before COVID.
4 years. It's been about 4 years.
4 years.
At least.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, it's been a while.
We made it to the LP show at the Palace Theater in St. Paul, and it was epic. It was...
Epic might be an understatement.
It was so good. I knew it was going to be good. I hoped it was going to be good. They brought it. It blew any expectation away. Like,
I kind of wanted to follow them around the country.
Yeah. Where are all these stops? Which
They're
ones can we
Europe.
make it to?
You want to go and just like bum around Europe and follow LP?
You know exactly when to ask me, like when I'm all excited and energized about like
Should
live
we go on
music.
An adventure, Keith?
Think about it.
Aw.
So
That's good.
I was blown away. I had a great time. It was phenomenal. The musicianship, the stage presence, the lights, the background, everything about the production, let alone the execution. It was amazing. What did you think?
Well, you see, no. No, it was really good. It was really good. And I've been listening to LP's album all week on my commute.
The latest album, Love Lines?
Yep, the latest album.
That's the tour they're on.
And I believe that they played, I think, every song on the album. I think so.
I bet they did.
I think so. And they played my favorite two songs, Golden and Ola.
Mm-hmm.
Those are my two. Oh my goodness. So good. And One Like You is like probably my tied for second.
I love that song. I was so happy they played it. I'm like, maybe they'll play it twice.
And can I tell you what one of my favorite moments was?
Yeah.
The last song they played before the encore was Long Goodbye.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, they're going to do a long goodbye. They're going to be back out here if we cheer long enough. They're going to come. They better play Ola. I went and they did.
I clapped the whole time they were off stage.
You did. It was amazing. But the long goodbye, and I was giggling to myself because I'm like, how appropriate. They're in Minnesota. It's like the Midwestern goodbye.
Yeah.
You know, that takes like a good 40 minutes.
Watch out for deer.
Watch out for deer. That's the way you say we care.
That's how you say I love you. See you later.
Yeah. Tell your mom and dad I said hi.
Yep. What are we going to talk about today?
So today we are going to talk about the Barbie movie. A little out of left field, maybe.
Maybe.
Do you think? Maybe.
We watched it. We watched it with the boys.
We did. We often talk about stuff that we have watched or consumed and kind of our thoughts about it. And so I'm excited to talk to you about it and get your thoughts.
Let's dig into it.
We didn't watch it in the theater. We watched it at home. We had a little family movie night.
Mm-hmm.
Homemade air pop popcorn and probably some chocolate.
Yeah.
I was excited because child 1 really wanted to watch it with us.
Yeah.
He's really excited, which doesn't always happen.
Yeah, and child 2 was kind of like, I don't know. And then he ended up watching the whole thing with us, right?
Exactly. And I was sitting there, I'm like, there's so many things that I want to talk to you about. And I will say, I sent you an article this morning, and I was really excited about some of the themes that article talked about. But I think what I was hoping is maybe we could talk about it because, so the Barbie movie wasn't just about Barbie. I mean, it was, but I think it was also about life, and it was about leadership, and it was about showing up in the world as you and trying to navigate your way as your true self.
Yeah.
And find yourself.
Specifically for what that's like for women, right?
Right. But I also think for Ken too.
Yeah. See, that's the part, like with any of it, where even the article that you sent me was fine. It was good. But I feel like the Kens get too much of a pass. That's something that it's like, it kind of bugs me.
I should say, anybody that's listening to this, spoiler alert.
Oh, yeah.
Right? We're going to talk about all of it.
Yeah.
And just our thoughts. We aren't going to tell you the necessarily the storyline, but it's probably going to come out in our conversation. So if you don't want to know and you haven't watched it yet, go watch it and then jump back on. So you think, I mean, there is a part where the Kens end up really
they bring patriarchy to Barbie world.
yeah, that was a little bit of a bummer.
Yeah.
I have to say.
And then
sorry, I got really excited there.
And like once they're overthrown, Ken's all sad, which I get, but it's a juxtaposition of what, in my opinion, what women have to go through every day in the real world, right? Like that's kind of the power of this movie is it gets you to see it from a different angle, even though you shouldn't have to see it from a different angle to understand and empathize with the way the real world is working for a lot of people, right? And I'm not an expert on any of this, and I do not want to come off it is certain I have a little bit of fear of talking about this because I'm sure I'm going to put my foot in my mouth.
I'll call you on
probably say something wrong.
And I'll be supportive of you.
But when Ken's basically like the main Ken, right? Ryan Gosling, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a point where they're like their coup is out cooed or whatever, right? And he's like, once I realized that patriarchy wasn't about horses, I was kind of bummed anyway. And I'm like, no, you weren't. I'm like, don't give him a pass and like let him just say like, well, I didn't really want to be mean and bad. I'm like, you totally were. And so that's the one thing where I'm like, oh, Ken just got to say, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't really mean it. And I'm like, oh, like that was a missed opportunity for me, or it just kind of fell flat for me. Anyway.
But I think, I mean, the one thing that I think is important, though, is the Barbie movie showed these very extreme poles, right?
Yeah.
Where it was all Barbie world, where women ruled everything. They were all the Supreme Court justices. They were the president. They were the mayor. They were all the things,
yep.
Right?
Yep.
And then when Ken brought back patriarchy, the Kens were all the things.
Yeah.
So I do feel, I know what you're saying, but I also feel like it was presented in just such an extreme on
right.
each end to demonstrate that case. The thing that I thought was interesting, though, and I was trying to think about this as a woman. So Ken, throughout the entire movie, except for when they take over Barbie world, Ken really sees himself as a plus, as an accessory to Barbie, right?
He's the plus one, right?
He's the plus one.
There's no Ken without Barbie is,
right.
I think, literally something he says.
Right. And I guess one of my questions I have for you, I thought it was interesting because they didn't even fully develop his Kenness, enough to give him more, like his occupation was beach.
It wasn't even a occupation, I don't think. I think it was just
it's like, what
theme.
Do you do? I beach. I'm beach.
Yeah, which is hilarious.
Which is kind of funny.
They pointed that out in that article too.
Yeah.
Funny.
But it, it kind of...
It's my purpose. Beach?
Beach. But it does, like, I think, like, as a woman, I think about that too, because we laugh about Ken just, his purpose is beach, right? But I think maybe, this is like a big, wide statement that I'm about to say, because I know it hasn't all been resolved and fixed, but I feel like, 50 years ago or more, women very much so were kind of in that category, right? So it's kind of like, well, what do you do? Or, what's your purpose? Home?
Right, yeah.
And I'm not saying that's bad, because I mean, it's really, really hard work and it's meaningful and important work. But to have that be kind of like a identity, yeah. I think it was an interesting juxtaposition. I think from historical woman role and purpose, maybe that society placed upon women, and still does in many cases.
Right.
And then that with Ken, right? In Barbie world.
Yeah. You might hear people say like, well, you're not your job, or you're not what you do. Right. But on one hand, if you self-identify as something and it's your job, there's a power in that, right? Or there is identity in that. But it comes when, like what you just said, which is like when people prescribe it to you or assign it to you, it's not empowering, right? It feels more like something to keep you in your place kind of thing, right? I mean, they just switched it and made it. That was what happening to Ken. What's happened to women for centuries,
Right.
in the real world.
You know what? The one line I think I was like, oh, it's like that. When Ken discovered what patriarchy was, when he went to the real human world.
Isn't he in like the library or something? He found books or something.
I think so. Because he was noticing that men were in all the roles of power, and they,
I did like that, even though it was like, oh, you're a man, so you can just get whatever you want. He's like, well, give me a job. And they're like, no. And they're like, well, you give me a job. He's like, well, you need an MBA, you need this, I did like that at least. Like,
yeah, but I will say it was that same point that when he goes, do you do patriarchy? And he's like,
no. He goes, no. He's like, well, actually, we do. We just cover it up better, or we hide it. We hide it better. And I was just like, oh.
I was like, oh, that feels.
Is that what you're?
That's what I was gonna say. That was the thing that, like, hit me like hard. I'm like,
yeah, because
dang right.
That's like that was like a line that really struck a chord, because you laugh at it, and it's something you shouldn't laugh at, right?
And it's like, but it's still true.
It's like when you're seeing stand up, and it's a little colorful. And you kind of giggle, and then you feel like, oh, I shouldn't have laughed at that, but like that's kind of part of it. And it's like, but that was like a real thing, right? Where it's like, ooh, like, yep, keeping it real. Like, oh no.
The other thing I wanted to talk about that I thought was interesting, and again, it's going a little back to this article, but I noticed it too because it's the symbolism. So Barbie, everything is perfect, essentially, right? And she's having girls' nights, and they're partying, and they're going to the beach, and they're waking up with perfect hair, and, everything's wonderful. But then there's a certain point at the beach, I think it was at the beach, that she takes off her high heels. And by the way, the high heels were spot on. Mm-hmm. Like, that's the one thing growing up. I loved my Barbie dolls. I can't tell you how many high heels I bought. They used to, okay, so this is going to date me. I'm sorry, I'm going on a tangent. I used to have and beg my mom they would come in these packs at the Ben Franklin. I don't know if anyone knows what Ben Franklin is, but it was like a craft store. Do you know what a Ben Franklin is?
Heard of it. It's probably maybe a local to like our region. So
it's like a craft store, a drugstore. I think
like a Walgreens. It's like
a Walgreens, yeah. CVS. Yeah. Thank you. They would always have these packs of Barbie shoes, and you could get like 10 or whatever. I can't even remember now. But the shoes were so amazing and completely spot on. And I was like, oh my gosh, those are the shoes that I always beg my mom to get me more of when I was at the Ben Franklin. Anyway,
so you're talking about the costume design?
Costume design.
Okay.
Amazing. And so then Barbie steps out, and as you know, like Barbies have like feet that are shaped for high heels. So she permanently has a high heel foot, even if she doesn't have the high heel shoe. What happens in the movie is her foot goes flat on the ground. It no longer stays up. And it's kind of this symbolic moment of she's noticing something different within herself, and that everything isn't necessarily perfect. And I think she like tumbles over.
Yeah, she can't walk.
Right? And she can't walk. And it's one of those things where I really did think about the symbolism behind that. When you start looking around and noticing and taking off maybe the rose-colored glasses in an environment that you're a part of, it's kind of like your feet kind of flattening out, like Barbie's feet flattened out. It's kind of like you noticing like, okay, so this isn't perfect. I don't have my cute little party pumps, whatever it is. But you start realizing more in depth the complexity of what life is and your environment and culture that you're a part of. Did I get really deep on that. And I incorporated cute shoes. There's moments, at least I find this, there's moments when you're working in organizations where you start thinking, okay, like say you have a new job, right? And you're like, this is great. This is wonderful. There's not really any roadblocks. These things are going really well. I'm getting along really well. And then you start to have some of the reality kind of set in. Or, I mean, even I will say this too. Sometimes when things are easy and you don't question it, and then you start realizing, whoa, maybe I should have been questioning that. Have you ever had those moments?
Yeah, I've had moments where I was like, oh, why haven't I thought of that before? Or why, things like that where I'm like, oh, I never thought it could be a different way. I was simply doing what I knew.
Yeah.
And so.
And it felt like easy and good and
or why would I change it?
Right.
And then it's like, oh, it could be better. If maybe I should try this. But you did just say something that made me realize kind of the metaphor of the shift from her everything being perfect and her being able to walk basically on her tiptoes to when her feet went flat, it was like coming down to earth, coming to reality, right?
Yeah.
Because she was starting to feel what real women in the real world were feeling, not in Barbie world, right?
Right.
Okay. So I kind of got it now.
Thank you for helping me articulate that, because there is that thing where from like if we're talking about gender and experiences of gendered leadership, and I promise I'm not going to talk about gendered leadership this whole time.
That'll be next time.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Just kidding. I do think that there is, when I started out in leadership, I've always believed that I can accomplish anything that I work hard enough to do. And I put my mind to, and I put in the work, and I do preparation. And I always notice some things as a woman, but I really started noticing it when I stepped into leadership. Especially at the time I stepped into it, I was a younger leader. So kind of that intersection of being fairly young, being a woman, I had some real aha moments that surprised me and kind of brought me back down. Things like, and maybe I'll just give, and maybe this isn't exactly the analogy, but I would come in and I would do a presentation and I will or I would have said, oh, here's an idea, or this could be an idea of an approach, and no one responding. And about 20 minutes later, a male colleague saying, hey, what would be a good approach? Sharing the exact same thing I shared. And everyone being like, you know what? That sounds great.
Mm-hmm.
And me being like, wait a second, why didn't it get heard or acknowledged the first time it was said by me?
Right.
And so, like I said, I mean, that's not exactly the same, but it kind of, I guess some of those experiences brought my feet from my high heels down to the ground, realizing that I was playing in the same world as everybody, but there was also a different layer of expectation that was put upon me. And I don't think it was intentional, but there was a layer of reality check maybe for me, or coming down to earth to realize, oh, I can't just come in and say something and somebody will hear me the first time. I have to come in, say something, and then have someone mansplain the thing that I just said to them.
Right.
And it was when I thought about that, it made me stumble, just like it made Barbie stumble. Like, it throws you off a bit when you first realize it,
mm-hmm.
and the world that you're actually functioning in when you come into it maybe being a little naive or maybe a little hopeful or maybe a little too trusting. Like you're almost not jaded yet. Right. I'm not saying I'm jaded,
well,
but I'm
but
do you
you're
know
not jaded yet means like why should you? Like why would that have to be reality, right? And why aren't you given the benefit of the doubt like your male counterparts?
Mm-hmm.
You know, why do you have to be so articulate or so immaculate with your presentation and others can show up and wing it? And everybody sees the difference, but it still gets passed, right?
Right. Or
it's
even
still allowed.
Even, I mean, that's about the work, but even how you show up, right?
Yeah. I kind of meant that too.
Well, no, but even, you know, when people have told me, male colleagues, you know what? It's really great if you'd smile more. Or, you know, you look so serious. And even just that idea that you don't, as a woman, have access to the full range of emotions that other human beings do, and realizing that unfairly impacts their perception of you and who you are and your ability. I think that, again, was a very, like a heel dropping moment or foot flattening moment, coming down to earth. Am I going too far with the analogy?
Yeah.
A little bit. All right. I'm going to keep going with feet. Okay. Is that okay?
Yeah.
So the other thing, there's a certain point when Barbie was in the real world, she was kind of moving forward and just kept hitting roadblocks, kept kind of running into danger. And there's a certain point where she decided to go back to Barbie Land.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like there was a point where she's like, this is not what I have signed up for or what I expected this to be. I need to go back to where I came from. Right? So there is that point where I think you maybe need to decide, when do you need to shift? When do you need to retreat a little bit? And some of it's just to take care of your own self and your well-being.
Yeah. Unfairly, right? Why is that the ultimatum kind of thing that's just served to you? That's how I view it. It's just like, okay, you can either stay here and grin and bear it, or you can pack up your things and go home and find something else. Because imagine if we changed what was happening.
Right?
Yeah.
And actually made change, like lasting change.
Systemic change, yes.
Yeah. So before she went back to Barbie Land, she finds the head of the company, a Barbie, right? All men.
Yep, the board.
Right?
Yep.
The board, all men. Will Ferrell, by the way, Will Ferrell being the like CEO or the head of whatever, just makes me laugh because like he was Lord Business, right?
Yeah, in the Lego movie.
In the Lego movie. And wasn't he another like character in another movie where he was the main CEO? Probably not. Maybe it's just the Lego movie and a couple of them. I don't know. So she gets into this boardroom, right? So she goes back to where her home is, where she came from. And they decide that the solution is to basically put her back in the box.
Right.
And zip tie her hands in the box.
Yeah.
Which I'm like, what are they doing?
Yeah.
She's found out too much.
Yeah.
We're going to put her in this box and keep her quiet and silence her and hide her away. Very disturbing, right?
Yeah.
And so what I thought was interesting is that is, again, where like her home, where she came from, people trying to make her what she always was and started out as, and returning her to what they remember her being when she was quote unquote good. And then the juxtaposition again of the founder, Ruth, helping her escape and helping her make the decision to become who it is she wants to be in her deep down in her heart, right? And so I thought it was an interesting, again, like returning home to those that inform who you are and who you show up as was interesting to me, of that you can have that tension between people wanting you to return to who they believe you are and how you should be.
Mm-hmm.
And those that also help you see your potential and help you navigate the path to become what you want to be.
Yeah.
So I thought that was also, I don't know why I like that part.
Yeah. What I remember too, and that's a really good comparison there, because I think a lot of us sometimes feel when we're trying to make a change, people try to keep us in that same box because they don't want our change to affect kind of their reality, right?
Yeah. We talk about that quite a bit, actually.
Yeah. And that's why, and I hear people say, like, if you have something that you're working on that you really care about, you're being creative with, maybe don't share it with your family at Thanksgiving, because they're just gonna kind of ruin it for you. And because if you're changing, that changes everything for them, and people don't like change, kind of thing. And that's like the opposite of what you and I are trying to do. We're trying to lean into change and growth, right? And so, like, back to the creator, right? She meets the creator of Barbie.
Yeah.
And then she was kind of like asking her for permission at one point. And she's just like, "Oh, I don't own you." Like, and I thought that was really interesting, because that's more of, like you were talking about, like, that's a little bit more of like what we're looking for when we're seeking to grow and change, which is somebody to support us and be like, "Well, yeah, let's figure it out." Like, and she's like, "Well, maybe, maybe you're this kind of Barbie, or maybe you're this kind of Barbie." It's like she was helping her figure it out instead of putting her back in the box that she was supposed to be in, right?
Right. And I think, it's interesting. I probably have talked about this before, but I was given a pretty open playing field from my parents and my family about what do I want to be when I grow up.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's one of those things where I don't know, not everyone, especially women, I don't think a lot of women weren't as lucky to have been told, you go after and be what it is that you want to be and do what it is that you want to do. It wasn't so long ago that women had only, a short menu of careers that they were okay to pursue. And I think that I've been really fortunate to have more of the creator behind me of saying, okay, so let's figure out, what is it that you want to do? What are your options, rather than saying, get in the box and do as you're told. I think, again, that's a really interesting from my perspective as a woman. I think that's interesting in how maybe I see that and interpret it, and knowing that the role and empowerment of women hasn't actually been all that long, right? Women gained the right to vote just over 100 years ago now.
Yeah.
And like, if you think about it, that is not that long ago.
No.
It really isn't.
No.
And so,
or being able to open a banking account without your husband.
Right. I still actually, I just got a new car, and when I was applying for the financing, I still had to sign because information had to go to you as my husband that I was opening a loan.
I didn't get any information yet.
Did you? You will.
Oh, okay. I saw the car though.
Yeah, you saw the car. Did I let you drive it yet? I think I did once.
I can't believe I got the keys out of your hand.
I know. Yeah. Won't happen again. I had one more thing, but it looks like you're thinking.
Well,
that's something you wanted to add.
You were saying something there about we've made progress, right?
Allegedly.
Right. Literally allegedly. Because then you see them highlight, that's the movie highlighting, is that people in the Barbie land or whatever, they think they solved all the problems in the real world because they're Barbie, and they've shown, and they've been an example to the real world to show
Of what women can
what
do.
women can do, and that
Right?
women
And who they can be.
Yeah. And then we're whisked back to the real world where we find out, as we as Barbie, right? Find out like, oh, it's not, the real world isn't a utopia for women, right? And like she's getting catcalled by the
It's not.
Imagine that.
Sorry. Too soon.
But I think it's just pointing out that we've come a long way, but we still got a lot of way to go. Yeah. And
Can I tell you how many times I've been called sweetheart, honey, or kiddo as an executive leader? Not recently.
Yeah.
I got the grays going and stuff now, but
oh yeah.
no, but I just need to throw that out there. You can probably cut that.
Okay.
Or keep it in if you want.
All right.
It's up to you.
Okay. What else did you want to say there?
So the last thing that I wanted to talk about, and this was again, and I don't think I actually said what the article was that I had sent you. It's an article from Forbes. It's called 6 Leadership Lessons from Barbie. Don't overpink it. One of the last lessons that the author, and I'm going to read it just because I thought it was interesting, is that the weird, the wise, and the old are as transformative as pink Birkenstocks. The reason why I wanted to talk about this is because I think that many of us will say, well, yes, I mean, those that have wisdom, those that have lived experience definitely do transform our ideas, our thoughts, help make us better leaders, help us show up in more mature and refined ways, more thoughtful and intentional ways.
Mm.
The part of that sentence and that lesson that really stood out to me was that the weird also help us be as transformative as pink Birkenstocks.
Mm.
And so I wanted to talk a little bit about what the movie had in it, Weird Barbie.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Do you want to talk about Weird Barbie?
Was it played by, was it Kate McKinnon?
Yeah, Kate McKinnon. She did a fantastic job.
Yeah. That's the Barbie that, if anybody that had Barbies had a weird Barbie, right?
My sister and I had a number of what I would say weird Barbies. 2 reasons. One, we grew up in the 80s and 90s and were huge fans of the crimper. And so we had a few Barbies that had one big crimped hair. Shout out to anyone else that did that. We cut Barbie's hair, and we also had a cat named Pepper that really liked to chew on plastic and electrical cords. He didn't die from electrical cord stuff, but he would bite off our Barbie's hands and their feet. And so we had a lot of Barbies that were missing different things or had hair that was cut or melded together. And so, yes, so we had a number of quote unquote weird Barbies.
And so to bring that back to why like the weird was powerful to you, was it simply because you had weird Barbies, or
oh no,
because you agreed with how the weirdness allowed that Barbie to see things and not be taken over by the patriarchy and could help the other Barbies, even though she was weird, quote unquote?
Right.
Okay.
So I think part of me, it warmed my heart a little bit because everyone had, well, many people that had Barbies had a Barbie that they experimented with and made modifications to it that were not repairable.
And that probably felt sometimes like, oh, I ruined it, right?
Yeah.
And then that one ends up at the bottom of the toy chest.
Right.
And maybe gets neglected, right?
Right.
Sounds kind of like...
Or I gave it to Jenny.
Right. Or kind of like it
Sorry,
feels
Jen.
like similar to like Toy Story type stuff, right? But like what it makes me think of is that weirdness gives you kind of some powers, right? You can kind of shifts your perspective a little bit.
Right.
You know, he lets you see things differently.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the thing that I thought was powerful about that it's not so much that there's like weird as being othering, even though in Barbie world, how it was talked about at the beginning, it was, but it kind of became a superpower. And
at least the other Barbie said to her face, "Sorry, we call you weird Barbie behind your back too."
I think she's like, yeah, I know.
That made me laugh pretty hard. At least they were upfront about it.
That's true. I do think, though, the thing that was powerful for me about it was we all have our quirkiness, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that I'm weird.
I think you're weird too.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And so I think that sometimes thinking about how your weirdness or your quirkiness adds to your ability to think of things differently, resist maybe that mainstream flow, and being okay that you're different and you're unique and you have something to contribute in your own way that's going to make the world better is incredibly powerful. And if it wasn't for Weird Barbie, there wouldn't be a way to get rid of patriarchy in Barbie Land.
Right.
Right. And so I feel like she was somewhat, I was going to say she was almost the hero, but Barbie was also the hero. Like she went on the hero's journey.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's a really interesting idea because she went on the journey, but did she really choose action?
But the thing is, there was a point. So the hero, right, on a hero's journey, typically the hero goes through the journey and is asked to do something about it. And at first decides they're going to give up, right? And ignores the call. Actually, that was just in the book I read, the MBS Michael Bungay Stainer book. Stainier.
Yeah, MBS.
Yeah,
you're reluctant hero kind of
right,
thing, right?
Yes. So where you're going on your journey, you're called to do something and you ignore the call.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what Barbie did. And if it wasn't for Weird Barbie to be like, come on, let's go, she would have been, wasn't she like face down on the floor?
Well, it's because she couldn't walk because her feet weren't working right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Weird Barbie was kind of like the oracle / like the wise Yoda kind of thing in a way, right?
Yeah.
Or Obi-Wan or.
With a better style.
Yeah. I don't know about that.
I loved her style. It's great. Like she was always in the splits. I thought that was funny because
she got played with too hard.
Yeah. It's like, well,
no.
I hear you. I understand that. But so I thought that was an interesting thought that Barbie is kind of the hero on this hero's journey. And Weird Barbie is also the oracle. I like that. I was going to say the hero, but it is kind of more the oracle to help her continue on her path to not give up when it's really hard.
Yeah. And kind of like holding her accountable in a way, or like saying, or like nudging her to hold herself accountable and to fix it or to seek out what the problem is instead of just complaining or I want it to be how it used to be. It's like, well, you want that, you need to maybe do something to get it back. Go ahead.
Okay, so one thing that you said there is really interesting to me because you're right. She said, I want it to get back to the way it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
But my question is to you is as you're going down a path and you're learning and you're growing and you're trying to restore something to its previous state, quote unquote, can you ever truly get back to the way things used to be? I know my answer, but I want to know yours.
Well, that makes me think of like the parable of no one ever walks in the same stream twice kind of thing.
Mm.
Because you walk on the stream, you've changed the stream and it's never going to quite flow the same. The other thing it makes me think of is that I sometimes seek out things from the past in order to remind myself of like how I was feeling in those moments, not so much to return to the moment and relive it or to hold on to it, but more of like channeling the energy of what I was feeling. Like what I'm probably talking about is like, what was I feeling when I was listening to that album the first time, or when I wrote that bridge or that chorus, or that chord change, like, things like that's kind of where my brain goes. But short answer is you can try. I just don't know if it's, necessarily going to give you the outcome you're seeking. I'm not looking to go back anytime soon. to anything.
Yeah.
I've decided there's no going back. I'm going forward.
Yeah. Yeah, and I will say from my standpoint, I agree with you. I like that parable of the stream.
Yeah, I say that, and like I've heard it a couple times over the last several months, and I think recently, but every time I hear it, I'm like, oh yeah, it's a saying from somewhere.
I think that no matter what you do, you're always growing, evolving, and you can't quite go back to the exact way that things were. And I think we talked a little bit about this last time, but I think the experiences and the journey that you're on impacts how you show up today in a way that is transformative if you choose that path, right? Not everyone cares to choose that path, and that's okay.
Yeah, I think there's not really going back, but there is stagnation and there's being stuck. And, I mean, it's something I've been thinking of and doing thought work around and journaling about, because I'm coming to this where I've made a decision. I've made a choice that I'm choosing action, right? So that's why I'm saying that. But because like when I feel the tension of am I going to do this or am I not? There's a tension in there, right? And there is a choice. I'm tending to choose moving forward. But there's also the other choice of recoiling and hesitating.
Right.
They're both choices. They're both actions, but I'm looking for the action that's going to propel me forward. So I don't know if that is kind of what you're saying there. Or...
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's that, but it's also the idea that because of the experiences you've had on your journey, choosing action is important, but it's also the action you choose and the way you hold yourself through that action and follow through isn't going to be the same because it's informed by so much more than if you were to choose that action, say 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago.
Another thing I just thought of like going back, right? Imagine, and I mean this with all the love in my heart, imagine going back and living with your parents. There's no going back. Like
I don't think they'd want that either.
Exactly.
That's
the second part. If they're listening, they're like, no. But you know what I mean? Like it doesn't work that way. I
mean, it could work that way.
No, it would be a situation. It would be a circumstance. It would not be working. I can guarantee they would say the same thing.
I don't know. So, Keith, was there anything about the Barbie movie that you really, really didn't like? Was there something that just stood out to you that you're like, ugh?
No, I mean, I kind of mentioned the one thing, which was like Ken kind of getting a pass of literally ruining the Barbie world. And he's like, to be honest, I kind of lost interest after I realized that patriarchy wasn't about horses. And I was just like, oh, I'm like, you need to be held accountable for your actions.
Been hanging around me.
No, I mean, it's just, but I mean, not really. I'm not mad at that. I'm just kind of like, oh, that was an easy way to move past that. I have one of my favorite things, but I want to hear if you had something that you didn't like.
So I think the only thing that I didn't like maybe was, and I don't even know how to say this. So the ending where we started with Barbie world, perfect woman run world.
I did groan a little bit at the ending, then, actually.
Yeah, and then we went to patriarchy, 100%, all in, right?
Yep.
And then the Barbies worked to take back Barbie
Put everything
land,
back how it was.
right?
Yep.
Put it back how it was, and really started to say, like, someday, Kens, you'll have, we strive to let you have the power that women have in the real world. I thought that was kind of funny, actually, and resonated with me. Yeah. And at the same time, I don't think that is what that inequity is a comfortable goal
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
No,
So that's where, I don't know if it's groaning, but it's kind of.
No, that resonated with me too.
Did it?
I was like, ooh, I'm like, that's not an ideal.
But it highlights our current situation.
Exactly. And that's why you got to kind of go with it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that we can work towards more equality and equity.
Yeah. Because I'm not sitting here saying like, oh, that's not ideal for the Kens. It's like, okay, but it's okay for women in the real world. I'm like, no, that's not what I'm saying. Like literally, right? So it's like, so I'm not mad at that at all.
I do think it probably gets the audience thinking though, like, oh, snap.
I hope so. I really hope so.
If not, it's just our take, right? As we dig into it.
Yeah.
Okay. So tell me, you said that you had a favorite moment or favorite thing.
Okay.
What was that?
One little thing that I absolutely loved was Ken's fanny pack. It was his name, Ken, in the Metallica font. It was like just so hardcore. I that made me giggle, and I'm like, I kind of want to get a Keith one of those. But probably my favorite part was America Ferrera's when she kind of goes on. I don't mean to call it's not a rant, but she gets out.
She articulates.
Yes.
The frustration, the pain, the reality, the frustration, the lack of agency.
Yes, that women feel in the real world, and all of the conflicting messages that they have to hold all at once, and how they need to be something and nothing all at the same time to anybody who demands it, basically.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that was one of the times I was crying during the movie.
Oh, man. I was ready to, if I had a mic, I would have dropped that mic.
Yeah.
I think I probably even said, boom.
Yeah.
Did I?
Yeah,
I probably did. Because I'm like, yes, that.
Because
I would love to play it on this, but I know that we would get in so much trouble. We can't do that.
Go watch the movie. I mean, it was cathartic, right? It was a catharsis. Yeah. So
yeah, that was my favorite moment.
I was glad they went there.
I was too.
Yeah.
I will say this. I love that they developed a Barbie that had cellulite. That is cool.
Oh.
Heck yeah. Women are perfect of all shapes and sizes.
Absolutely.
And Barbie can depict that.
Yeah. Yeah. Overall, it was a good movie, and I enjoyed it, and it makes you think, and it probably made me think better than I can articulate here. And I'm really glad we watched it with our boys.
I am too. Yeah. So Keith, we often end each episode talking about a recommendation or something that you're reading, listening to, enjoying, consuming. Is there anything that you'd like to talk about that you recommend this week?
Okay. So I'm going to talk about another movie that I just watched, which is like the antithesis of the Barbie movie. I watched Date with an Angel from 1987 because we're going to see live recordings of How Did This Get Made, the podcast. And they're doing Date with an Angel one of the nights.
I swear I remember that movie.
I'm pretty sure you probably watched it.
Oh, I'm sure I watched it.
So I'm sure I did. So my recommendation is to watch that if you want to, just so that you can then listen to the podcast. But it's bonkers, as they would say. I'm just like, what is this? Anyway. So the real recommendation is How Did This Get Made? I'm excited that I'm going to their 2 live shows, going with my buds, Ty and Eric, to Date with an Angel. So that's interesting. And then you and I and my sister are going to A Beauty and the Beast Christmas.
I'm so dang excited for this.
It's like a Hallmark movie, right? Or something.
I am so ready to start watching Christmas movies.
Yeah.
I'm in. So I'm so glad that's the one we're going to.
We still need to watch that. We're going to watch it either later tonight or tomorrow or something. Yeah. And yeah, so it's always fun to listen to that podcast, and it's more fun for me if I've seen the movie sometime. Sometimes the movies are so bad it's like, why did I watch that? But yeah, so that's something I like to do for fun. I add that into my routine because we tend to dig into a lot of things that are kind of heady, kind of take a lot of brain power and attention. And so I try to mix up some of the comedy and some funny things to make room for that too, so that I don't get, overwhelmed. What are you been listening to or watching?
It's a really good question. So actually, you might have to help me with this one. So I'll start with the one that's a little more serious. I have been listening to an audiobook called It's Okay That You're Not Okay by Megan Devine. So it's meeting grief and loss in a culture that doesn't understand.
Oh, geez.
I know, a little heavy.
I was just talking about not being heavy.
I know.
No, keep telling.
So I've been listening to that on Audible, and it's a really good listen because it helps you understand more how society doesn't allow grieving to take place and make grieving okay. And so it really reframes societal norms around that, and that it's okay to not be okay when you're going through really hard times. So that's the book I'm listening to. On a
different note.
A different note? Yeah, a different note. We have been listening to Taylor Tomlinson.
Oh, watching her. Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Her Netflix specials.
Yeah.
Her quarter life crisis. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. She is hilarious. Hilarious.
She is great.
She's really good. So if you haven't listened to Taylor Tomlinson, listen to her. She's hilarious. I also believe she's going to have a late night special after, is it Colbert?
Show. That's what I thought you told me, and I thought I saw.
So. I think I saw that too.
She's going to be was it After Midnight or something, or whatever it's called? But
yep.
She's going to be the host of the show.
I will be in bed.
You can record it.
Oh, we can record it. Yeah. That's right. Those technologies are available to us right now. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not good at night times.
Yeah. That I've totally forgot. And because I've really been enjoying it, watching those stand-up specials of hers were great. Awesome.
Yeah. So those are my 2 recommendations.
Mine too. All right. Wrap it up.
I think so.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
See you next time.
Bye.
No, that's going to fall.